So good evening and welcome to the closing event for the 2023-2024 Alison R. Bernstein Media Mentoring Program event, Advice from a Work Friend Live. Tonight, we will hear from Dr. Roxane Gay, who serves as the New York Times Work Friend, about common themes that impact women in the workplace. She will cover various topics such as finding work-life balance, managing relationships and networks early in your career, balancing multiple identities in the workplace, and more. Dr. Gay is a writer, professor, editor, and social commentator. Her writing ranges from, but is not limited to, novels like An Untamed State, essay collections like Bad Feminist and Difficult Women, and memoirs like Hunger. She has a newsletter, The Audacity, and a bi-weekly column in the New York Times. And I have also had the pleasure of working with her for the past 2 years at Rutgers through her role as the Gloria Steinem Endowed Chair in Media, Culture, and Feminist Studies. And so now, Dr. Gay, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nishi. It is really great to be here with all of you this evening. And one of the most interesting, I think, and unexpected things I've done in my career is the Work Friend column. I've certainly had my share of jobs, some of them good, some of them not so good. Many years ago, of course, I did my time in a more traditional work environment. And one of the few things that I learned, or I guess the many things I've learned, but it's the same thing over and over, is that so many people are deeply unhappy in their jobs. Part of that, of course, is just a symptom of capitalism, which doesn't really care about people. They care about what you can do for the organization, nothing more and nothing less. And a lot of times employers will say things like, we're a family here. And if an employer ever says something like that to you, please run in the opposite direction as fast as you can. Because family is family. And also, most of the time, family can be complicated. Like, that's not necessarily a selling point. But oftentimes, when employers say, we're a family here, what they mean is that we want to exploit you and take you for granted in the same way that we tend to do so with our own families. And it means that they're going to try and get away with as much as exploitation as possible. And then at the end of the day, give you a good hug. But when it comes time to fire you or to not give you the raise that you've earned or to otherwise mistreat you, all of a sudden they stop talking about family and everything becomes business all over again. And so it's really important to keep in mind that it's important to hopefully get work that you love and to be collegial and to be, a team player, as they say. But it's also important to remember that the job is never, ever going to love you. It is a job. It cannot love you. It cannot reciprocate. And a lot of times I get questions like, I feel bad about leaving my job and I'm worried that the place is going to fall apart. That's not your problem. So what? Let it fall apart because they would let you fall apart. And so I was very interested in all of the questions that you guys had to send in because I'm always curious about the kinds of queries people have. And so I thought I would just go through these questions and offer some answers that are incredibly subjective. If you ask 5 people for workplace advice, you're going to get 5 different responses. But that's okay. It's important to crowdsource and get a range of perspectives. And, the first question is about AI, which makes a lot of sense because we're hearing quite a lot about AI in the media. And whenever there's some new technology on the horizon, the media kind of loses all sense and starts to feel like we're 5 days away from Terminator, which is simply not the case. AI is not that smart, and it's really important to remember that. And so the question is, with the rise of automation and AI, I'm worried about the future of my job and how it will evolve. What skills should I focus on developing to future-proof my career in an increasingly digitized world? When it comes to future-proofing, a lot of times people want to know, like, is there a specific skill or a set of classes or a technology that I can master that will future-proof me? And the answer is no. The best thing you can do is to hone your critical thinking skills because those skills are future proof. Common sense is future proof. And so you want to make sure that you are good at learning, that you are good at adapting, that you are nimble and flexible, that you are willing to try new things, learn new technologies, and adapt as the workplace shifts. It's really hard to anticipate what the next big thing is. Right now, it's AI, and there are a lot of people who are learning how to use AI to great effect. But we're also starting to see a lot of the limitations of AI. AI is learning on all of the books that we write, all of our social media presences. AI is trolling Wikipedia, but AI can't think creatively. It can only do what we tell it to do. And a lot of times the results that it gives are wrong or they sound terrible. Um, a lot of teachers are very worried about what is AI going to do, but it's so very easy to spot an AI written essay. It's tragic. I actually feel bad for students who just think that we were all born yesterday, like bless your hearts. No, we can tell it sounds terrible, and not terrible in a I rushed my homework way. It sounds terrible in a something not human wrote this way. And so it's really important to not be as afraid of change in technology as you might ordinarily be based on all of the sort of breathless news reports about how AI is going to be the future of everything. It isn't. And for now and for the foreseeable future, what it is a tool. And sometimes it's a tool for shortcuts. Like on Dropbox, you can use AI to summarize a PDF, but I tried it once and it took a 50-page PDF and summarized it in two very pathetic sentences. So even there, you can't necessarily trust it. But if you want to stay abreast of current changes, do your research on AI and think about the ways in which AI might be used in your profession and familiarize yourself with them. But that's just that openness and that willingness to learn new things. There's nothing specific you need to do. You just need to be open. And that's one of the biggest things that people struggle with. Once you know what to do or how to do your job, you get really excited because you think, oh, I finally mastered this thing. I'm good from here on out. And then, of course, your industry shifts or it changes entirely. And so it's not just that you have to master something, it's that you have to be willing to start over and learn new things over and over and over again. And it can be very tiring, but it can also be very gratifying. And so I encourage you all to remember that just because you're graduating or eventually will graduate doesn't mean that the learning is over. Quite frankly, the real education is just about to start. You're going to learn probably more in the first 6 months in the workplace than you did in 4 years of college. Not because college doesn't matter, it does very much, but it's much different to go from theory to practice and to learn how things work within whatever field that you enter versus how things work in the classroom. And so think of it as this exciting opportunity that you get to partake in over and over and over again. And hopefully good things will come. The next question is, what's your advice on advocating for DEI in the workplace when there's so much backlash both in and outside the office? Well, right now we're seeing quite a lot of backlash in a lot of areas. People hate progress, especially people in power, because progress means that their position is being threatened, even if it's being threatened in a very small way. So it's important to recognize what's really underpinning all of this. And it's also important to not let those people who are trying to eradicate DEI control the narrative. And unfortunately, right now, they are winning the sort of narrative war because now people are joking and referring to people of color as DEI, even if they're being tongue in cheek, which means that the conservatives have already won because we're already using this new way of thinking about diversity. Um, and it's been like 3 or 4 months. It's really kind of terrifying. And so one of the most important things you can do is to not participate in that version of the narrative and to make sure that you are always clear on what DEI actually is versus how it's framed. And it depends on your position in the workplace as to how you advocate for DEI. You have to pick your battles, and that you can't be fighting every single day. You can't put yourself on the front lines every single day. Our time and our energy is finite, and you don't necessarily want to jeopardize your position in an organization, particularly as a new employee, which is not to say that you say nothing in the face of injustice, but rather to say that not every battle is worth fighting every single time, particularly when you're trying to establish yourself in the workplace. And when you are marginalized in any way and you try to speak up, you are often branded as a problem, as someone who does not fit with the culture, which is a very vague phrase, that really means you're making me uncomfortable and you're making me have to confront my own privilege. And so you're not a culture fit. And you don't want that label because it's a really hard label to get out from under. So you have to just choose wisely. And if you are less marginalized than others might be, you have to make sure that you are advocating for diversity and inclusion as often as possible. And that means not deeming it your responsibility to speak for people, but rather to create space for those people to speak for themselves. Um, and so it just requires an active process of being an ally, an active process of being an advocate, and also recognizing that you can both do those things and also have a sense of self-preservation. Because if you don't have a sense of self-preservation, truly no one else is going to have that same level of care for yourself. Um, Someone asked, how do you deal with older colleagues or clients not listening to you and your ideas because of your young age? That is a challenge. People do tend to dismiss the very young and the very old, and it's unfortunate. And so you have to speak with confidence. One of the key things that I notice, especially with young women, and I would say also non-binary people, is that oftentimes they talk in a really quiet voice. And you wonder, like, why are you whispering? Why, like, put some bass into your voice. And so you have to speak with confidence. You have to make eye contact. Sometimes you're going to have to repeat yourself multiple times. If you have colleagues with whom you get along very well, sometimes it really helps to repeat to reinforce each other's statements. A lot of the women who worked for the Obama administration found that in key meetings, if they would reinforce one another and always attribute where the idea came from, by the time three people said it, that idea was more likely to be heard by those in charge. And it's a really great strategy for lifting each other up, for making sure that credit is given where credit is due, and also being sure that you will be heard. Sometimes three people need to say something to be heard. And when you're younger, that is on a part of the thing that you have to deal with. But you also can find ways to be heard by just being great, consistent, excellent. When you say you're going to do something, do it when you say you're going to do it by, and do it as well as possible. The best way to earn credibility is to show that you are credible. And when you find that even being great is not enough, and you will encounter that, it may be time to collaborate with an older colleague who might have more purchase with decision makers. But the challenge there is, how do you make sure that your ideas are attributed to you and that they're not co-opted by this other person? Another thing that I find works, especially when you're younger, is doing a lot over email so that you can always point to, I actually wrote this down per my last email, Bob. And sometimes that remove of words on a screen allows people to forget about who's actually offering the words. And so always follow up in-person conversations with an email, articulating what you discussed, what your ideas were, and what your plan for implementing those ideas actually is. And yes, as Rachel says, a paper trail, it's so critical. Document everything all the time. I can't tell you how satisfying it is to say, well, per my email from March 27th, we did actually discuss this. Oh, like it's so good, that feeling. It's just, I hope that you each get to experience that feeling because it's divine. What are some red flags to look out for during a job application or interview process? For me, one of the key red flags is when people are wishy-washy or really vague about compensation and where they won't give you specific numbers. Now, in New York, there are actually now laws in place about disclosure, and you may or may not be working in New York. So that's only like one state. I think California might also have similar laws, and maybe Massachusetts. Um, but when there's a lack of pay transparency, when you when someone is willing to make inappropriate jokes, um, sexist comments, if they're going to do that when they're supposed to be on their best behavior, can you only imagine what they're going to do once they get comfortable with you? And so that's a huge red flag. Anytime an employer says we're a family here, to me, that is the biggest red flag. And unless like I really need the money, that's a no for me. I'm just like, well, I'll finish this interview, but I'm not going to take any job that you might offer. No, thank you. Um, if everyone that you interview with is telling you horror stories about how awful the workplace is, and I can assure you this happens, that's a huge red flag. It's just such a huge red flag because, again, during the interview process, people are generally on their best behavior and they're trying to show you like why you should join them. And they're also grilling you to see if you'll be a good fit. But if all they're doing is airing the organization's dirty laundry, or, like if one coworker leaves and they start to gossip, anyone who will gossip to you will gossip about you. And look, we all gossip, but I'm saying like at that stage where you don't even know somebody and they're telling you some gossip, like that's a problem. And so you just want to keep an eye out for people who are doing strange and or inappropriate things in a situation where they should be on their best behavior. Also, when you look at like, let's before you even get to an interview stage and you're applying for a job and you read a job ad and it has a bunch of senior responsibilities and it says you only need 1 to 3 years of experience, or it has a lot of basic ass things and it says you need 7 to 10 years of experience. Anytime there's a demand and the experience request is disproportionate in either direction, that's also a huge red flag. It means they don't really know what they're looking for, or they want someone that they can take advantage of in one way or another. If you see a job ad that's 2 or 3 pages long and at the bottom it says that the compensation is $40,000 a year, red flag. Because again, that means that they're not really looking for a colleague, they're looking for a donkey to carry all of their stuff up the mountain. So you just have to use common sense and read job ads really carefully. Fortunately, these days, there are a lot of great websites where people can talk about their employers, Glassdoor, and there are a few others. It's been so long, but um, I actually enjoy reading Glassdoor and getting some of the tea about organizations that I work with. I'm just like, tell me everything. And, it's like Rate My Professor. It's all very subjective. Like some of the things on Rate My Professor are accurate, and some of them are, my teacher's ugly and I don't like her. And it's like, okay, I can't help you with that. So you have to take it with a grain of salt and also recognize that happy people don't leave comments. And there might be other reasons for their unhappiness and their complaints. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt, but you just have to pay attention. And if something is too good to be true, if it seems too good to be true, it is too good to be true. But if you go on an interview or a series of interviews with an employer and people seem chill and happy, that means something. That is a reflection of the workplace. If people seem unhappy, that is also a very accurate reflection of a workplace. What are your thoughts on destigmatizing discussions around salaries with friends and colleagues? Money is a hard thing to talk about for many people, oftentimes because there are so many disparities between people. But you're never going to know what you can command in the workplace until you start to talk about it with other people. And you're never going to know what's eventually possible if you don't start to talk about it. And so you just have to remember that it's just numbers and you're just seeking information. You're not trying to judge. You don't know anyone else's life. You don't know how far they have to make $15,000 or $150,000 stretch. And so you just have to take that information and use it wisely. And also remember to never use it against someone later, because if someone is generous enough to share their salary information with you, they're trusting you. And I actually think everyone should talk about their salaries all the time. I've spent most of my career teaching at state universities, so my salary has never been a secret. And so that's part of why I think I have comfort with salary discussions, because it's like, well, you can look it up in the library. It's not a big deal. Um, but even when I was in other workplaces, when you talk about salaries with other people, that's when you start to find out, oh, I'm either doing very well or I'm being underpaid, especially when you can compare not only salaries, but job titles and job responsibilities. When I was at Purdue 2 schools ago, um, I had gotten tenure, but they forgot to give me a tenure raise. And I wasn't paying attention because I had other stuff going on. And one day, a student reporter from the school newspaper sent me a query saying, hey, did you know that you're, like $50,000 underpaid? I had no idea because I thought I had negotiated very well for myself when I got the job. And then they showed me like your next colleague above you makes $50,000 more. And I was like, oh my God, it was horrifying. I was horrified and I like just so sad because I really thought I was savvy when I negotiated for my job. And I was like, oh my God, look at me. I'm going to make like $60,000. Anyway, long story short, it was because of pay transparency and starting to ask people at other institutions and asking some of my colleagues, like, hey, what's going on? That let me know that I had grossly underestimated what I should be making. And I was able to then take that to the institution. And of course, it didn't work out in my favor because they made a silly, silly counter offer. And I was like, well, I don't want to work anyway, so goodbye. But that was helpful information. And so you want to find it out and you want to be disarming and you want to be polite about the information, but information is always power. And especially when you're marginalized, you want to make sure that you're being compensated fairly. And all too often, women are paid less than men. People of color are paid less than white people. Even within like racial disparities, it's Asian women, white women, Black women, Latina women, and then Native American women in terms of who makes less money on the dollar compared to white men. So it's important to keep that in mind and try to advocate as fiercely as you can for yourself for equity. Same work, same pay. It's as simple as that. And very few organizations are willing to be transparent and do that work. And you're not going to know you're underpaid until you find out what everyone else is making. And so when friends ask, it is uncomfortable, but I think it's a generous and kind thing to do to share that information. And like, don't be snotty about it. Like, if you know you're making a lot more than other people, just like be respectful about it because, you know, money is tough and not everyone has it. Um, when do you know if it's time to move on from your position or company? Like, like when you start to think about killing your boss or your coworkers, when you start dreading going to work, not just once in a while, but every single day, when you can't get through the day without going into the bathroom to cry, it's time to go. Life is too short, and we spend way too much of our time at work to be that miserable. Sometimes work just sucks in general, but like when you are profoundly unhappy, when you are being taken advantage of, when you have a boss that's undermining you or colleagues that are undermining you, when you are in an abusive professional situation, when you're being taken advantage of, when you're being worked too hard, when you're being asked to work not even like 50 or even 55 hours a week, but 60, 70, 80 hours a week, it's time to go. Now, it's always easier said than done. A lot of times we don't have as much professional mobility as we would like, whether it's a very contracted job market or the economy and high unemployment or um, financial obligations in our lives that we simply can't afford to not meet. So you have to always keep in mind like what your flexibilities are, but in general, the younger you are, the easier it is to go. And the rule of thumb is that it takes 1 month for every $10,000 you want to make to find a new job. So if you want to make $120,000 a year, in general, it's going to take you a year to find a job. Now, it's not, it's not set in stone. Sometimes you just find a job right away. But like when you want to work, um, if you just need a job that pays $10,000, $20,000 a month, I mean a year, a month, who among us? A year, that's going to be very easy. You're going to find that job. Those jobs are easy to transition between. They don't pay enough, but they're abundant. When you start to get into the higher salary ranges, the job interview processes become more rigorous. And oftentimes there are multiple interviews and tests and other hoops to jump through. And so you have to be sure that you have enough runway to manage the amount of time it's going to take to find those jobs. And so you have to think of all of these factors together and then start to make decisions. And the best thing you can do for yourself as your life allows is to have an emergency fund for like that get out of jail card, that freedom, and saving 6 months of runway. Very few people can actually save 6 months of runway. Let me be clear. But just any amount of runway you can give yourself, like the best gift you can give yourself, if your life allows it, is that freedom to leave a terrible job and to know that your world will not fall apart. You will not be out of a home. You will not go hungry if you leave your job. And if you can give that freedom to yourself, it's much easier to recognize when it's time to go. But don't stay in an abusive situation. They're counting on you to stay in that abusive situation. And there are other jobs out there. So it just means it's time for you to start looking. And it's also great to just make sure that you're always keeping your resume or CV up to date and that you have a general cover letter template that's up to date and that you adjust as you accomplish new things in your career so that you have this set of work documents ready to go when it is time to go back on the market or when you feel like you're creatively stifled at work or that you've accomplished everything you can within an organization. Because sometimes organizations have an iron ceiling where you can't, if it's a small organization in particular, where there's actually no more room for advancement. In those circumstances, you really do want to have up-to-date documents so that you can always keep your professional options open. And even though networking can be very annoying, it's also important to let your network know when you're starting to look for work. Let your friends and your former colleagues or even your current colleagues, if you can, let them know like, hey, if you hear of anything that you think I'd be a good fit for, and also give them specific prompts. I'm looking for a position in graphic design where I can work on blah, 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 whatever. Because a lot of times people find jobs not just through like searching online job portals and so on. They find it through people they know, or at least they start the search there. Uh, let's see. What advice do you have to give to someone who isn't happy at their current job, but is financially unable to step away to rest or pursue the things that bring them joy? It can sometimes feel hopeless to be caught in this cycle of doing the 9 to 5 and then having no energy to pursue the things you want or even to just rest. That's a great question, and it's really challenging to find that work-life balance. But, I think that oftentimes when we think of rest, we sort of go from 0 to 60. Like either I'm working all the time or I'm taking 3 months off. And so you have to find ways of building rest into your life. We all have time, unless you're a surgeon or maybe the president of the United States. And even then, I think he probably takes more naps than anyone here. Um, you have to find ways to build time for rest into your schedule, because if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't find those times to rest, even if it's 3 hours on a Saturday, you're not going to be able to be the best version of yourself at work. You're not going to be able to sustain your life. And so you have to make yourself a priority. Now, when you have children or you're taking care of parents or both, it can be a lot and it may not be as realistic. But I firmly believe that almost everybody has 2 or 3 hours a week that they can spend on themselves, whether it's napping, knitting, pursuing a hobby, working on your writing, whatever. You have to keep that commitment the same way you keep the commitment to every other appointment in your calendar, because no one else is going to do that for you. No one else is going to respect your time if you don't respect your time. And so you just have to make the time. It's a commitment and it can be overwhelming. And you can, anytime I sort of think, okay, I'm going to play Wordle now for an hour or whatever, I immediately feel guilty because I start to think of the 90,000 things that I should otherwise be doing. But like, let's be real, if I'm procrastinating, I'm not going to do them anyway. So let's just cut that middleman out and just take the time to do what I want to do for 1 hour. Truly, the world is not going to come to an end. I am not a brain surgeon. No one is on the table waiting for me. If you are a brain surgeon, well, sorry, but hopefully you're being compensated well. How do you balance an active social media presence while abiding work guidelines? Ugh, very carefully. Um, Social media guidelines from organizations can be pretty crappy. Like, I'm not allowed to talk shit about some of my colleagues at the New York Times, even though they very much deserve to be talked shit about. With their very insane opinions. But I actually just talk shit about them to my friends. And so sometimes you can't have an active social media presence. You just can't, because you need your job. And so that's like when you go talk to your friends and you like go out for a drink and you talk all the shit you need to talk and you get it out. Or you get like, a Finsta and you have your little secret social media account where you talk shit, but you make sure that it can't link back to you. You just have to be realistic. Social media can get you, oh man, I have seen it time and time again. It can get you into so much trouble. And you really just have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is like saying this one thing on social media more important than the paycheck I need to collect on Friday? The answer is no, it is not. It just isn't. And it's taken me a long time to learn that. It's taken me a very long time until like one day I talked shit about Pamela Paul and she's a snitch. And she decided to tell my editor who had to tell her editor. And then they were like, even though you're a freelancer, we're going to need you to abide by our social media policy where we don't disparage one another. And I'm like, some people deserve to be disparaged, but okay, sure. And so now I just actually just talk shit to my friends in the group chat. It's great. It's the group chat is safe. So I highly recommend getting you a good group chat. A group chat you can trust too. No screenshotting, no shady sadie, just a good little group chat where you can get all of your evil out in a nice space and where your little friends will kiki with you about it. It's great. I highly recommend it. Um, How do you, what has it been like attempting work-life balance as your own passions as an author continue to grow? Well, it's been challenging. I'm not the best at work-life balance. I'm a Libra, so I'm always trying to find balance and I'm always trying to make time for the more enjoyable things in life, but I'm a workaholic, married to a workaholic, so it's very toxic. Um, But the older I get, the more I recognize, like, what do you want people to say at the end of your life? Like, she worked hard or she lived hard? And the more I recognize, like, nobody's going to give you a prize at the end of your life for working hard only, or for overworking. So I'm trying to find ways of pulling back and recognizing, like, there's no such thing as a writing emergency. There just isn't. It's fine to, like, miss that deadline. It's okay to spend time with your family. Um, and it's a practice, like all things. You have to put effort into taking care of yourself, into taking care of your free time, enjoying your free time. And when I actually do that, my writing is much, much better because I've had some rest, I've had some rejuvenation, things that fill me up, and that makes it much easier to then be creative and or to write about current events or whatever it is that I need to do on the page. And so it's an ongoing thing, and hopefully I'll figure it all out very soon. What advice would you give to Black and POC women in the media industry that you wish was given to you in your early career? One of the most important things I wish I had been told was that you don't have to say yes to every person who wants to mentor you. Um, White women love to mentor Black people and women of color. They just love it. They love having these like little pets. And some mentors are great and wonderful, but some people are just trying to make themselves feel better and make themselves feel like, oh, look at me embracing diversity and helping. But like, are they actually providing you help that you need? Are they providing you guidance that will be useful for what you want to accomplish? Sometimes the answer is no. Like, and yet we're always told, seek out mentors, get mentored. But if it's not a good mentor, if it's not a good fit, if the mentor doesn't see you as a person, then that relationship isn't going to actually benefit you. So I just wish someone had been a lot more honest with me about mentoring, because I would have made some wiser choices about who I worked with. And um, so, yeah. And then the last question here is, especially for women early in their careers, what tips would you recommend to not let work define them? What would you suggest encouraging them to not be wrapped up in their work or a working mindset 24/7? Well, this is really like what I was saying a few minutes ago. Nobody's going to love you more because you work yourself to the bone. They're not going to appreciate it. They might say it or whatever. But when you show people that you're willing to not care about yourself and that you're willing to work 24/7, they're going to let you do that because it's in their best interests. And so you have to protect yourself. You have to protect your time. That's my dog. Um, and especially for women, this is important. One of the key things I can tell you, don't take notes in meetings. Your hand is broken. You don't have any paper. You don't have a pen. I don't speak that language, whatever you need to say, because people always look to women, and especially women of color, to transcribe meeting notes. Now, I think we should all pitch in. I think collegiality is important, but women do that work so often, and men will say things like, I have terrible handwriting. That's a you problem. You better learn how to type then, or you better learn how to decode your own handwriting. Don't be the note taker, because it starts with note taking, but then it's a bunch of other tasks that will get piled on you because people think that you are willing to do that work. And we're often encouraged to do that work to be a team player. That's actually not how teams work. Teams work where everyone does their part. So maybe you suggest to your coworkers that we have a rotating system. If there are 12 of us and we have 12 meetings a year, that means one of us will be taking notes every meeting, but it's not going to be the same one. It's going to be a different person. Now, this does not apply if you have a disability of some kind, or if one of your colleagues has a disability that would prevent them from taking notes. This is just within, common sense parameters. But it's just so important because it starts with notes, and then it's can you stay late? Then it's, can you meet the client? Then it's, X, Y, Z. And especially when you're younger and you don't have children, people with children are always going to be about that. I have to go take care of my child. So I suggest that you get a fake dog right away. And you have to get home by 6:30 because Sparky has not been let out since 8 a.m. It is just imperative. Nothing will make you happier than a fake dog because you also don't really have to walk it. They don't know that the dog isn't real. And just get a little dog bowl and leave it at your house. And when they ask, oh, Sparky's at the groomer, like, it's fine. Am I telling you to lie? 100%. Because people will always like lord the child thing over you. And it's like, yeah, I know I don't have kids, but I have a television and I need to get home to it. So stop asking me to do your shit because you have children. That's a you choice and that's a you problem. I love kids. I love my friends with children. I love families. It's all lovely. But people without children are always expected to pick up the slack for people who do have children. And that's because we live in a country that doesn't support families. But that's a much bigger problem. And then we cannot solve that as individuals. So let's leave that to the sociologists and protect our time. Because if you won't protect your time, no one else will. So sometimes you're just not going to be liked by everybody. And that's okay. Like, if you're liked by everybody, then you're not interesting anyway. So it's all good. So yes, if you guys have other questions in addition to the ones you sent, I am happy to try and answer them.
So I think there was a question, a follow-up to the salary question. Julia asked, how would you recommend bringing up the conversation about what a colleague is getting paid without it feeling out of the blue?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in general, I mean, I don't think you just ask out of the blue, like, you're sitting at the cafeteria at work and you're like, oh, so Susan, what are you making? You just want to make sure that there's a context that makes sense. But really you can frame it like, make sure you're like clearing why. Like, my 1 year review is coming up and I want to make sure that I have great information to make my case for a raise. And so if you don't mind, would you share what your salary is? Because I would like to know what might be possible for me in 3 years or what I should be asking for as a raise. Just give an honest reason as to why you're asking, that it's not for prurience. You're not just trying to be all up in their business, that you are just gathering information so that you can better advocate for yourself. And yeah, like I said, in New York, it's become much easier to do that because um, jobs have to advertise what the range is, and pay transparency is becoming more standardized. But that's like 1 out of 50 states. And so it's still a very taboo thing. People in general are still very reluctant to talk about it. But the more we normalize it, the more comfortable people overall are going to be in talking about money. So just try and, the worst thing they can say is, I would rather not share. And that's okay. And you just take no for an answer. Um, and then you move on. And is it disappointing? Yes, but it's truly not the end of the world. It's just like, okay, they want to be a blocker. Okay, that's fine. I'll remember that when they want something. I'm petty like that. Like, I keep a register of like all the shady shit. And so I will just be like, in 1989, you said no. And so today the answer is no. And then I just close my little register and save it for the next time.
Lisa asked, how do you think hybrid work, is it helpful or not for women?
Oh, hybrid work is great for women. It is a woman's best friend. Fuck the office. Nobody wants to be up in there. First of all, it's cold all the time. Like, you can be at home and control your own temperature in your pajamas, like from the waist down, like party on the bottom, business on top, like a little reverse mullet. And so I think hybrid work is great. I think everyone should work from home if they want. Some people want to go to the office and like chit chat and whatever, and I call those people people who need friends. But I actually don't need friends. I'm good. And so for me, I love to work on my own time in my own place. And I go to the office once a week and it's great. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you. And then I go home, mind my own business, and get my stuff done. And also, it's better for the environment. It allows you to run errands. The challenge for women is that oftentimes, if you have children, you are pulling double duty if you, for whatever reason, choose to have children with a man, which make sure you do it with the right kind of man who's also going to do his part in raising them kids. But the challenge, and we saw this during COVID, like a lot of women were managing work from home and they were also responsible for childcare. Like literally their husband would be sitting next to them at the kitchen table with his little headphones on, looking like Boo Boo the Fool, while the woman is like, what are we going to do about these kids? Like, oh, and he's like, that's a you problem. Is it? I think that's a divorce problem. So you have to make sure that you have a situation where working from home is tenable. Some women actually love working in the office because they get out of the house. And so I actually think that hybridity is wonderful because it does allow for the flexibility and the best of both worlds. And the reality is, I think anyone who wants to work fully remote, I support that choice, but some things do work better in person. They just do. I think, and as someone who loves teaching online and also loves teaching in person, I think teaching is better in person. I think students are more forthcoming. I think that the conversations are more organic. Um, but there are like, we've all sat in endless meetings. And do I need to be in this room with you? No, we can do this from Zoom. Zoom has really solved a lot of problems. And so just figuring out what things you do best in person and what things you do best on your own time and or via Zoom can really help you determine how you want, within the parameters of whatever organization you're working with, like how you want to structure your work life. Know your assets. Like there are just some people who are like, I can't stay at home all day, or I live in a studio apartment. Like in those instances, yeah, you probably do want to go into the office and take a breath and have some space. But there are other people who want to live in Colorado and work in New Mexico or whatever. And hybridity and or just working from home allows them that. And finally, what it does is give you so many more choices in terms of jobs. It is a game changer for people who want to work at certain companies, but don't want to like live in Portland or whatever. Like I'm thinking of Weed & Kennedy, which is this great advertising agency in the Pacific Northwest. They do like Nike's their biggest client. They do a bunch of other stuff. And now a lot more people can apply to those jobs and have a shot because they've gone, I think, almost fully remote. So, it can be just really wonderful. And also, given the cost of living in places like New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, DC, Boston, yeah, go live with your family back in Kansas and like live in a mansion for $5 while all your colleagues are like in their little sad Brooklyn apartments. Like I think that's the life. I do. Like leave the city, go and breathe some fresh air and enjoy your job. Remote work is great. Obviously, I'm a big fan.
I think we have time for one last question. Miranda asked, how do you maintain some form of separation between your self-worth and value and your work?
Hmm. Well, it's a challenge, but I try to remind myself that I am not what I do for a living. And I think that's something that everyone has to say to themselves. Unfortunately, especially in the United States, we tend to equate self-worth with productivity. Like the harder you work, the closer to God. But no, that's actually not true at all. And so it's really important to recognize that there's what you do for a living and you can be passionate about it. I actually want that for everyone to love what you do. I love what I do. I wake up every day like excited, which is a gift. But I also recognize that it is a fraction of who I am. I have so much more going on, and most of it is inconsequential, but that's okay. That's me. Like Fast and the Furious, I'm their evangelical, and I feel put on this earth to talk about the Fast and Furious movies. And I really love doing that. And so it's great to know that I have like interests beyond work. It also just makes you more interesting both in and out of work. Nobody wants to talk to someone who's just all work all the time, who's only thinking about like networking and advancing. That person doesn't have friends and at all. That person doesn't have one person in their life who could tell them like dial this back, get a personality, go on a date, take a shower. So you just have to remember that it's important to be a well-rounded person and to be a whole person. Uh, and yeah, just love yourself enough to be a whole person. And don't stay at work past 8 p.m. ever. Nothing good happens in the office after 8. It just doesn't. And well, maybe one thing, but you don't want to do that at work anyway. So just leave work by 8.
Thank you so much for your candid answers to all of our questions. I think we can all benefit from the advice you've shared, regardless of the different fields that everyone is in or how far along in each career. And thank you to our audience for all of the questions and engagement. This has been a great event.